Travis Wayne Goodsell. Let's see if we can do an oral video for you. Still have the threat of F-bombs. Still have the cyber threat by both YouTube and the shelter. But we'll try it. Try to keep it as short as possible. So, there are people who purposely misinform the public and in the church. And as a result, misinformation gets popular and gets spread around. And as such, I want to bang my head, scream, because of misinformation dealing with my education, my career. And one such has to do with the Temple of Marduk, the ziggurat, there in Iraq, which was Ur of Babylon. And living in Riverton way back in the day, there was a National Guardsman who came back and was telling everybody that it's the Tower of Babel. Oh dear God. Bang your head. Mental health will drive you mad. And so, yeah, no. And anybody who actually does at least read the Bible would know that this is not the case. Because if you're going to consider the Bible as literal history, you have to remember the Tower of Babel came first, long before Babylon came to come in and take Jerusalem captive back into Babylon, to Ur of Babylon. And so people just don't think. And those who don't do their research, don't do the work to study, and all they get is misinformation, they're easily conned, they're easily scammed and frauded. And when it deals with religious matters in the church, that's a very dangerous mixture. So, the original Egyptian ritual had to do with the temple and creation. Everything was about the human body and reproduction of mankind. And as such, the temple was that personification of being born again. As a father gives birth to the child who grows up to be the father to give birth to a child. Father becomes the son, son becomes the father. From Superman, Marlon Brando. And so for Christianity to call the temple a heathen pagan abomination is kind of wrong. But again, Egyptians, way back in the origin of mankind, Christianity, exactly. So who are you going to trust? Unfortunately, too many people trust the misinformation and make it popular. And so when Babylon, as this is New Year's, they migrated out and spread throughout the Middle East, and eventually 600 BCE, Babylon is formed. They create the Temple of Marduk. Even the Assyrians had this similar practice, such that on New Year's, the king would have a parade that led to the temple, and the daughter of the priest would have sex at the temple, in the temple. And so when you're looking at the story of Eli and Samuel, you see that Eli is chastised for his two sons having sex in the wrong room of the temple. And so that's why that's the case, is because originally sex was in the temple, because of that ancient Egyptian origin, that it all has to do with the human development. perpetuation of the species. And so this has long since been lost to us, as the current rituals in the temple are just for the ceremony and not for the actual consummation. And so you have Joseph Smith starting the temple, and is involved in marriage sealings, and we have that sealing that was just found by the people who are working on the Joseph Smith papers, and you can see that the manner of language that Joseph Smith is using does not match our current temple endowment ceremony for marriage sealing. There's a reason for that. It's because Joseph Smith didn't write it. Brigham Young did. And so that's why that matches with section 132, as it did not get put in Joseph Smith's Doctrine and Covenants. It was put in Brigham Young's the year before he died. All of a sudden it appears, and Brigham Young is claiming it's Joseph's. But anybody, ex-Mormons, who actually do the study, do the research, not just trust the misinformation, will know from your Book of Mormon it denounces polygamy 5 times. The Doctrine and Covenants had a chapter, 1835, Joseph Smith Papers, any of you can look it up, and CNN didn't. He had a whole chapter on monogamy, condemning polygamy. And Brigham Young, when he put in section 132, removed that chapter. He also put in section 131, what it is now, but he gutted it. What was in the original that Brigham Young did not want published in the 1844 edition. Joseph Smith talking to a monogamous couple saying that they will be exalted in the celestial kingdom, because section 132 says the law of celestial marriage is for polygamy only. You cannot be a monogamous couple and be exalted. That was Brigham Young's change. Joseph Smith had nothing to do with it. It was him and his Danites who were a part of the polygamous movement, a secret combination within Joseph's church to overthrow it, as they did. And so Brigham Young, in his created endowment, had what was the law of celestial marriage, not the law of chastity. The reason why it's now the law of chastity is because the United States of America shut down the church, and the church continued to practice polygamy in the temples. And so the Reed-Smoot hearings had forced the church to stop it. And so official declaration number 1 came out, and now they had to change the ceremony for the law of celestial marriage and turned it into the law of chastity, which I will read to you pre-1990. It's actually 1991, because that's when Benson had it go into effect, was January 1991, not January 1990. And it says, "We are instructed to give unto you the law of chastity. This I will explain to the sisters. It is that no one of you will have sexual intercourse." So, no one of you. Notice the singular there. And notice sexual intercourse. It's very specific. There's only one way to have sexual intercourse, and that's the way of making babies. Except with your husband, to whom you are legally and lawfully wedded. Ta-da! According to the laws of the land. To the brethren it is that no one of you will have sexual intercourse except with your wife, to whom you are legally and lawfully wedded. Okay? So, baby making. To be with one man, one woman, according to the laws of the United States. Now we go on to 1991. And it was changed. We are instructed to give unto you the law of chastity, which is that each of you shall have no sexual relations. Again, it's the same thing. However, that time period with the sexual revolution of the 60s into the 70s had panicked the church, and so Benson then comes out with this kind of change, so that he doesn't say it, he just says sexual relations, because there's only one way to have sex, which is intercourse. That's the only way to have babies. And yet, because of the changing of definitions and the explanation of other activities, other things got included as sexual behaviors or sexual activity. There's only one way to have babies, and that's through a test tube in a lab with your husband or wife to whom you're legally and lawfully wedded. But yes, the church has tried to ban contraception, has tried to ban certain other activities, and that's why they settled with this, so that Mormons can interpret it how they want to. So if you get married to the wrong person, you're doomed for the rest of your eternity. Alrighty. So Nelson, he makes a change in 2019. And he says, we are instructed to give unto you the law of chastity, which is that the women of God's kingdom and the men of God's kingdom, okay, so we're using the plural again, shall have no sexual relations, still keep it a general. Remember, this is after the United States legally and lawfully allows gay marriage. Shall have no sexual relations except with those, plural, to whom they are legally and lawfully wedded. We've got a prepositional phrase, I believe that is, according to his law. Is it according to prepositional phrase? Maybe I should check. I'm already at 13 minutes. Adverbial. Okay. Oops. Wedded. Should have known. Who's his law? Yeah, well, it's capitalized, but it's verbalized. But the those who have to say it rather than the video, which I don't think, no, they're not doing that anymore. So those are all banned. So yeah, nobody will ever know from the text. But it's section 132, the law of polygamy. That's his law. Nelson even made a change to the law of the gospel, in which he says, we are required to give unto you the law of the gospel, which is the higher law. There is no such thing as a higher law in the New Testament. It makes it very clear he's not here to destroy the law of Moses. He's here to fulfill it. So there is no higher law. This is something that Nelson has created and is perpetuating and has put in his Book of Mormon videos and is doing a campaign for. It's referring to the celestial law of marriage taught by Jesus Christ. He didn't teach polygamy. What are you talking about? Exactly. So you can see what Nelson is doing here. If you're gonna do your research, so that you don't get fooled, you don't get caught unaware. You need to know this, because I know all about the church, born and raised. I know what he's doing. I see what he's doing. And so it doesn't surprise me. It disappoints me, because I know that this church is false. They're purposely seeking to overthrow the government so that they can restore polygamy. And when you restore polygamy, you inevitably run out of women, and therefore have to dip into the child brides. And that's the danger that is awaiting you guys. And you guys don't care, because you're not doing your study. You're not doing your research. Even ex-Mormons, you are not panicked enough about the evil of the church, because you too are not catching on to what's being done here by Nelson. So, there you go. I made it. 16 minutes. 3 hours to do the video. Upload it.